Escaping the Fold by Vincent Merkel. The Kalan King. About the same time that the Malak men raided the northern ridge of Teleonisi and absconded with Alexandra's coveted shield was about the same time that Fayuk had begun his journey, guided by the map he had seen on a cave wall. At that same time, the settlement on Deuteronomy was bustling with activity. The Kalan King, James, was meeting with John and Antigone Sirtakis in the City of Light at the Hall of Constitution. The hall was a part of a stone citadel where thousands of Kalans could gather to address the king and the people's representatives for redress of grievances or social issues. A mere 100 years before, the Kalan senators were large enough in numbers to fill the hall with family and friends, but a tragic civil war seated by Linnea and his cultish followers diminished the numbers of Kalan citizens by half. The Kalans had gone through a renaissance since the war, and most of the citizens had forgotten about the devastation that had occurred during the dark days in the not-so-distant past. They were a rich society, and the island was at least 10 times the size of Teleonisi, but their seafaring days had ended a century before, when the Kalans prevailed upon forces within their country. The Kalans defeated a cult that gave allegiance to the dark ruler of the sea, Linnea. Part of the cost of war and their deliverance from the beast's unholy ways was their incarceration on the beautiful island. They no longer traveled in boats or ships to the other islands for trade and commerce, although they had hundreds of fighting ships in museums that used to be command headquarters before the Civil War. The only useful naval fleet they had was made up of kayaks and canoes, as they were less likely to be noticed by the fearsome creature that would torture them for defying his power. Linnea hated the Kalans. He hated the Kalan tribes so much that he loved the hate better than he loved hating any other. The Kalans were once again being tested by Linnea and his evil influences on fringe members of the otherwise good society. John and Antigone had been lobbying King James for kayaks and military backing to help rescue their daughter from Teleonisi. Stories and sightings of Linnea between the two islands had become more and more frequent, and a small but powerful group of Kalans had been vying for political supremacy among the democratic and free citizens. They used stories about the power and providence of the beast Linnea as a marketing tool to curry favor with the less informed Kalan masses. Those who believed the stories were promised an easy life of countless favors and entitlements from their government. They were told that they would never have to work again and would live as a class of people to be served by the rest of the Kalan citizens. The first mate of the Tili, Nikos, should not be forgotten in this story, as he was instrumental to the social uprising in Deuteronomy. He boasted that the beast owed him a favor. If the king could be proven to have no confidence from the citizens, the sovereign ruler could be overthrown. Nikos, as advisor to a new ruler, the ambitious Senator Raham, would surely secure power and wealth on the island. You see, the poor was a demographic that was growing larger in numbers on Deuteronomy, but the poor people of Kalan were richer than most of the people that you or I have ever met. The justice system of the Kalans allowed for free speech as a given right, and they had no evidence that Nikos was a criminal since his arrival. So he was allowed to live among the Kalans and enjoyed the freedoms that they cherished. These aforementioned facts weighed heavily on the mind of King James as he deliberated on whether or not to grant kayaks and crews from his navy to send a search party for John and Antigone, Sirtakis' daughter, Alexandra. The good king did not want to outwardly deny the Sirtakis couple the only boon that they asked of him, as their heroic actions in saving the Kalan princess, Anasta, had made them instant heroes in the kingdom. The king had kept the couple close to him because they saved his daughter from the horrible fate that awaited her at the hands of the Malak men who had stolen her in a raid to Deuteronomy 5 years before. Also, in the 5 years that they had been kept away from Teleonisi by the menace of the beast of the deep, and a bureaucracy burdened by corrupt and greedy politicians, Alexandra's parents had contributed many great advances in science and medicine to the community. Princess Anasta was grateful to the Sirtakis couple and was their most influential supporter. She empathized with John and Antigone for the loss of contact with their daughter. The princess had heard word of a fire that was witnessed by Kalan sentries on the faraway ridge on Teleonisi weeks before. The fire was located at the coordinates on the faraway island where communications with Alexandra had systematically taken place in the past. The little red speck of light that the sentries had witnessed was caused by the fire that was lit by me, and unknown to me was a signal of distress that had alarmed the loving couple. They knew that something went wrong and called upon the king to repay his debt to them by saving their daughter from whatever was happening on the neighboring archipelago. James was an intelligent and kind man. As king, he did not put on airs about his station in life, as he was elected to be the king of Kalan and not born into the role. James sought to help the Sirtakis family, as he believed that the sanctity of life and the family was paramount and the basis for any strong society. King James was a protector of life, but was well schooled in the arts of war. Anyone that does not know him would certainly be surprised by the graceful way that he fought in battle when defending his people. He was a stout man, bigger than most, yet he moved more gracefully than any dancer ever witnessed on Deuteronomy. It was said that he could throw an axe from each hand, cleaving a skull in two while splitting a tomato for dinner at the same time. His reputation as a ferocious fighter contrasted starkly against his soft-spoken nature and keen sense of humor. James loved John and Antigone and spoke without reservation when in their company. John, Antigone, indeed, all of Deuteronomy and I have been blessed by your presence here. You are well aware that I owe you a huge debt of gratitude. I am prepared to grant you the resources that you need to retrieve your daughter. How could I refuse the people who saved my daughter, the princess, from an unknown and surely horrible fate at the hands of the Malak men? King James raised his hand to indicate that he was not finished speaking when a shadow stirred in the hall. The most effective Kalan senators and advisers had learned to listen very carefully when the king spoke. A senator who was waiting to address the king was standing behind a column on the side aisle of the hall, eavesdropping on James and the Sirtakis couple. His voice rose to an almost shrill level as he emerged from his cover. "Oh, James, no, 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 no! These newcomers, although they have served Kalan very well, shall not take any military force without the consent of the Senate. Their request is still being debated in the House of the People, and you know that helping them without our support would be an overextension of your authority. No, 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 we shall not have it." The senator paused. "Unless you are willing to go along with the new seafarers' treaty with the exalted one of the deep. You know that some people in my party have been working very hard at negotiating a deal with the creature. The newest of newcomers, Nikos, is an old hand aboard the grandest of vessels, and promised that he can lead us to much treasure and weaponry if we grant him a ship from the museum. Linnea has promised him free passage throughout his vast realm." James answered the crafty politician, "Senator Ram, you have become quite familiar with my name, but the law asks that upon official business of the state you treat the king with no familiarity. Please do not be so common as to call me the name that my wife uses, as I have no interest in sharing a bed with you." The king slowly walked around the senator and eyed him carefully. James continued speaking. "Antigone and John, as well as the newcomers Vangelis and George, have testified that your friend, newcomer Nikos, is not of sound mind. He is the one who has convinced you to seek favor with the dark beast of the deep. Of what need are this man's weapons to you? He is in leagues with the Kalan sworn enemy, the destroyer of minds and of men. Why have you taken up with them?" The senator spat back at the king. "Oh, lofty King James, how hard it is to be of such moral fibre as one such as you. Our people suffer while you sit at the pinnacle untouched by disease and hunger." Ram sneered. "We live in a free society, mighty king. Nikos has not been found to be a criminal and is free to speak, as are we Kalans. You have stigmatized Linnea and the newcomer Nikos, unjustly I might add, as you have held conference with neither one of the two. They offer solutions to problems. They offer power and passage over the seas, and they speak of a new world on the other side of the storming gates. The people grow tired of your old ways." King James and Ram had many disputes over the years. Antigone had witnessed a number of them and knew that the senator would waste time, anger the king, and change the issue. She was on a mission and had plenty to say about Nikos and his promises. She knew the senator was corrupt, but needed to get some resolution to her most important problem. Her aching maternal heart drove her to play on the compassion and sympathies of Senator Ram. Antigone spoke to the senator.
With all due respect, Senator Ram, think of your children. What if they were missing? Would you trust Babula with them? We started the hearings with the House of the People 5 years ago, and you are no closer to a decision. John and I implore you, please. We know it is within your power to help return our daughter to us here in the land of Kalan. Recently we have seen a distress fire on the distant shores of Teleonisi, and we fear for the safety of Alexandria. We cannot wait any longer for you to debate the details while her life is in peril. Almost every day I have sat in your courts and listened to your debates, and you rarely even talk about the rescue mission. But when you do, you and other senators are looking for ways to pass other laws and raise taxes on the people.
John interrupted Antigone and addressed the senator. The beast you speak of, Babula, would devour your children. Help us, and I am sure that we can find a way to gain passage without threat from the sea monster. We can teach you about the world on the other side of the storming gate. You do not need Linnea. He is evil. I have met him. My wife has met him. We know that he is a destroyer. Please stay away from him. Help us. Your efforts with Nikos and the abomination of the sea will lead the Kalans towards destruction and ruin. The senator became incensed at Antigone and John for calling him out for his ineffective use of power and bad judgment in dealing with Nikos and Linnea. He moved towards Antigone with his hands outstretched. He was not used to people questioning his wisdom and authority, and had found ways to bring up charges and imprison his political enemies in the past. Senator Ram bellowed at the couple, "How dare you? I am an elected official. You need to be taught a lesson about respect. I think an arrest might be warranted for your arrogance." The moment that Ram turned to Antigone, who was taken aback by the senator's outburst, King James drew his sword. James wielded a long, thin blade. The razor edge shimmered in the light that fell through the open columns and headers at the end of the ancient hall. He deftly sliced the air in front of the senator's face, and a piece of Ram's white, pressed linen headdress fell to the ground in front of him. The king spoke quietly to the senator. "You seem to forget, Ram, that we live in a free society, and as king, I am obligated to the safety of all of our citizens. I fear you went mad from Linnea's spell and tried to attack 2 honored guests of mine and servants of the people. They have earned their citizenship, while you were born with it, but are ready to give it to Linnea. Maybe the beast has gotten into your mind. Because of our laws, you are free to worship the evil one. But remember, Ram, if one of my people is hurt by you or your cult, you will swim with the beast for an eternity. This I promise." Ram bent down and quickly picked up his neatly cut headdress along with a fistful of his hair that was previously tied high above his head as a sign of high status amongst senators, and muttered under his breath, thinking the king would not hear, "You will pay for your insult and this crime." James addressed Ram sharply. "Surely you have said it. A crime has been committed here. You know that taking evidence from a crime scene is punishable by prison and hard labor, Ram. James smacked Ram on the rear end with the flat of his blade and fell into a boisterous and hearty laughter. The smack from the spanking blade echoed in Ram's ears as he dropped the cut linen and hair back onto the floor and ran out of the hall, red-faced and very angry.